past month or so, I've been getting settled into a new house, and that includes building this new brewery. Today, I'm breaking in the new space and brewing an English Barleywine on the 7.5 gallon Brewer's Edge mash and boil. I'll be honest, this is far from my favorite style, but it's going to help me with a long-term project that we'll get into later on. These malty beasts typically weigh in starting at about 8 to 9% ABV, but when it comes to alcohol content for this style, the sky's the limit. They're warm, bready, and sometimes include secondary flavors like caramel and dried fruit. This is a medium to full-bodied beer, and the color ranges from dark red to brown. Now, let's make some beer. For this beer, I'm using some local spring water and adjusting the water profile using gypsum, calcium chloride, baking soda, chalk, and a little lactic acid. While this step isn't necessarily required to make good beer, it definitely helps, especially if you want to make something great. The recipe for today includes 87% Maris Otter and 6.5% each of Crystal 40 and amber malt. Hopefully, that will give me an original gravity of about 1085. I'm going with a single infusion at 152 Fahrenheit or about 67 degrees Celsius, so I have this mash and boil set to 160 for mash-in. The 7.5 gallon capacity of this system should give me plenty of room for this mountain of grain. Let's get it going. I'll keep mashing this in until everything is nice and saturated, then I'll bump the kettle down a few degrees and start a 1 hour timer. While the mash finishes up, let's take a quick look back at what this space used to look like and how I got it to where it is today. The garage was kind of a dumping ground as we moved into the house, so the first thing I needed to do was clear the space, and luckily my girlfriend was willing to help with the project. Once we got everything moved out into the driveway, we started prepping the walls for sheeting. That meant removing a bunch of old nails and screws, making sure we had nice clean studs to screw into. I used 1/4-inch plywood sheeting to cover the walls, and it happened super fast thanks to this new brad nailer I picked up. I bought 4x8 sheets which matched the height of the walls perfectly, so I didn't have to cut anything down. There was only one spot that I had to notch out, and it was at the very top where it's well out of sight. One detail I knew I wanted was an integrated pegboard right above the work table. To make that happen, we found 2 smaller pieces of pegboard that fit between the studs of the wall and used them as a template to drill the holes. Looking back, I think there were a few things we could have done to minimize chip out, but it's easily one of my favorite features of the new brewery. From there, all we had to do was move everything back in and get to organizing. I'm stoked on how this turned out and can't wait to brew a few more beers in here. We've got 15 minutes left in the mash, and I want to recirculate the wort to clear it up a bit. This integrated pump seemed a little gimmicky to me at first, but it's crazy how convenient it is. No setup, no tubing, just flip the switch and dial in the flow. Pretty sweet. I flipped it on a couple times earlier in the mash just because I could. Okay, that's enough of that. Time to yank these grains and get our boil started. We're going no sparge today, so now that the basket is up and out of the wort, I'm cranking this mash and boil to full blast. Alright, we're up to full boil and it's time for the first hop addition. My hop filter doesn't quite fit into this larger brewing system, so I'm suspending it with a little twine. Here's 1 ounce of Galaxy and our 60-minute timer starts now. There's 15 minutes left in the boil and it's time for another hop addition. Here's 10 grams of Galaxy and a Whirlfloc tablet for clarity. And I guess I shouldn't put that into the hop basket. The last thing I need to do is get the immersion chiller in there. And just like that, we're ready to chill. Next stop for this barley wine is this 4-gallon Anvil bucket fermenter, which is quickly becoming one of my favorite fermenters. To keep the fermentation temperature steady, I'll be using the optional cooling system for the first time, and I'm stoked to try it out. I'm gonna get this thing transferred and I'll meet you inside for setup. Put the fermenter right next to my kegerator, and I've had this bucket of water chilling in there for a few hours now. The first thing I'm gonna do is throw the pump into the water with a piece of tubing attached to the outport. I'm also adding a piece of tubing for the return and securing everything as well as I can. Next, I need to put the stainless coil into the fermenter and connect the tubing to make a loop that runs from the kegerator into the fermenter and back into the kegerator. Now, I can throw the airlock on and insert the temperature probe from the controller. Then, I'll just set the fermentation temperature and plug in the pump. For this beer, I made a 1-liter yeast starter using 2 packs of California ale yeast from White Labs, and I'm shooting for a fermentation temperature of 65 degrees Fahrenheit or about 18 degrees Celsius. And the thing I'm most stoked about is that little barrel back there. More to come. If you like this video, let me know in the comments and consider subscribing so you don't miss the next one. Thanks for hanging out with me today. I'll see you again soon.